Hello and welcome to a horribly nerdy podcast. The podcast that's so bad, horrible is in its name. And on this podcast, we talk about movies, comic books, the paranormal, and much more. I'm your host, Chris, and I just wanted to apologize for everybody. I know the the audio is kind of up and down here and there, and I'm trying my best. I'm literally doing all of this on a smartphone. I don't own a computer to do this stuff with. And so I just ask, please bear with me. I'm doing all the recording, the editing, the processing, the producing. Everything is done on a smartphone. So I do apologize if there are some times where it's too loud or too quiet. Especially for headphone users, I do apologize if it just blasts you out of nowhere. Please forgive me. And on that note, I am going to be launching the A Horribly Nerdy podcast Patreon. There will be 3 tiers. $1 gets you early access to episodes, so you'll have them early. They'll be in a YouTube link that will be posted in the Patreon. $5 gets you early access and access to monthly bonus episodes. So there'll be like 2 to 3 bonus episodes a month. And the last tier will be $10. And I'm going to probably limit that to either 10 or 15 spots, only because the $10 Patreon is going to get you... you get to pick a movie for me to review. It can be any kind of movie. It doesn't have to be horror or comic book style or anything. It can be any movie, and I will talk about it. And when we do a Patreon pick episode, basically what it's going to be is I'll do the regular movie I was planning on reviewing. I'll do your Patreon pick, and I'll give you my thoughts on the film. Of course, you'll get a shout out on the podcast. Every tier gets a shout out on the podcast. So if you are interested in that, I will put the link in the comments and in the show notes. And I believe it is patreon.com/horriblynerdy. Again, that is patreon.com/horriblynerdy. HORRIBLYNERDY. If you are interested, and know that I really, really, truly am grateful for your support. I know there's, tons of podcasts and there's tons of Patreons out there. If you can't afford it, I completely understand. If you can only afford $1, look, $1 helps out so much, especially in producing this podcast, acquiring materials for this podcast, and even I have to pay now to store the podcast on certain like Podbean and stuff like that. I have to pay a monthly subscription, and that helps out with that. And I'll be honest, I am struggling hardcore for money right now, so this would help out with the podcast greatly. But if you aren't able to afford it, don't worry about it. If you don't feel like contributing, you don't have to. But if you do want to, and you do, know that I am extremely grateful, and you'll definitely get a shout out. And everyone that joins the Patreon will get a sticker when they are available, and you'll have my undying love forever. So let's get into our film for the day. And today we're going to be talking about...
It's time you believed in a new kind of horror. The horror of the children.
The best of them all.
Something you wouldn't dare to imagine has happened to the children. Something beyond your worst fears.
Jenny, darling, is that you? Mama. Tommy!
Something evil is happening, and it's happening inside the children.
I said to stop it. Cut it out. Stop it.
Please don't. Damn it, the phone's dead. And both gone mad. He was shooting the children.
The children will take you one step beyond horror to sheer terror. something terrifying has happened to the children. Pray you never meet them.
The Children is a 1980 movie, because I'm not going to call it a horror film, because it's something is what it is, also known as The Children of Ravensbeck. This is an extremely low-budget horror film, written and produced by Carlton J. Albright. What happens when 5 children on a school bus and a pregnant woman drive through a yellow toxic cloud from a local chemical plant accident? Well, let's find out in The Children. So after the local chemical plant has an accident, a school bus of 5 children and a pregnant woman drive through. Sheriff Billy Hart and local John Fremont find the abandoned bus and the dead bus driver, but none of the children are to be found. We soon find out that they have turned into these radioactive zombie children with black fingernails. So that's how you can tell if they've been quote unquote infected or not. They have these black fingernails. And the only way to stop them is to cut their hands off, which immediately kills them. Yep. That's what this film is about. And there is a point in this film where the sheriff has no idea which children are infected and not infected and just starts shooting random children. Luckily, they turn out to be infected. So, what do these children do with these zombie-like things? Do they eat people? Do they tear them apart? No. Their hugs are toxic and can melt people. Yes, that's what happens. So we find a young boy, I believe his name is Paul, and he finds his mother, who is so happy to see him after he's been missing for so long. He goes in for a hug and burns and melts her away. Soon after, a katana is picked up and chops off both of Paul's hands, who howls in pain. Well, he doesn't howl in pain. If you actually slow the film down and look at it, he's giggling uncontrollably, and that is one of the reasons why I bring this movie up, because honestly, the kids in this are really, really funny. This movie is not a great movie at all. It's a terrible movie, but it's a fun movie, especially if you've got a bunch of friends and you can just riff on it Mystery Science Theater style. Then I highly, highly recommend this movie. So, pretty soon we have a rampage of all the children converging on John and his wife Kathy's house. The sheriff ends up dead, and they chop up all the other kids, chop their hands off, and they are all dead. The next morning, Kathy, who just happened to be the pregnant woman who drove through the toxic cloud, is yelling to her husband, "It's time." He wakes up, runs frantically in the house to help deliver the child. As they are delivering the baby, the camera pans over all the dead bodies, including the sheriff's. All 5 of the zombie children are laying down peacefully, missing their hands, and the baby is delivered. But John is aghast as he walks in to see his wife breastfeeding the baby, but the baby has black fingernails. What will happen in the sequel? Well, nothing, because there was no sequel, because this movie was not appreciated at all. And it kind of sucks, because, yeah, it's terrible, but again, it's a fun movie. Upon its theatrical release, a ton of negative reviews. The Los Angeles Times called it a despicable movie that reeks of a nasty, ill-defined dislike of humankind. The Orlando Sentinel deemed the actors the ugliest bunch of folks we've seen assembled on any screen at any one time. Oh my God. And the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette criticized the writing, directing, acting, and special effects. The latter slammed for burned bodies looking exactly like a leftover pepperoni pizza, complete with black olives and anchovies. Yeah, it's not a great film. Again, the only reason I'm talking about this is because I came across it a little while ago, the other day. I had seen it. It's been a long time, but I was like, oh my God, I forgot The Children exists. And this is one I have to talk about because I feel it deserves more to be seen more, and not because I think it's a cult classic or something that everyone will love. It's one of those where you can kick back, have a drink, waste 80 minutes, and just watch a stupid fun film. It did get originally it was supposed to have a theatrical release, but it was limited. It was very limited theatrical release. In fact, it was such a limited theatrical release. There was, on the opening weekend of the movie, a drive-in in Tucson, Arizona, had over a 6-mile backup for people to see the film. So, yeah, it was eventually released by Troma Film. They bought the rights to it for the DVD release. It did get Video Asia eventually released part of its 5-disc Grindhouse Experience 20 film set, and then Vinegar Syndrome bought the rights and released it on Blu-ray. If you feel like picking up the movie, go ahead. I don't know if there's a ton of special effects out there. I haven't looked into it. This was just one I came across on, I think it was Tubi, or maybe even just a movie on YouTube I came across. But it's interesting. It's out there. You don't really see a ton of movies like where people are hacking up children that are evil. I know there's a few out there, Pet Cemetery, with evil children like Pet Cemetery, Cooties, and Village of the Damned, and I don't even know what else. I haven't seen many. But this one is just a super low budget. Let's just make a movie and see what happens. And it's out there, it's insane, and it's fun. That's all I've got to say about it. Check it out, The Children. Future Chris here. I also just realized I forgot to give my final verdict on The Children. I give it 2.5 black fingernails out of 5. Not a great movie. Again, just a fun movie. That's all I got to say on that one. Future Chris here once again. I know you guys are probably like, Chris, shut the hell up. You're driving us nuts. So sorry about that. But anyways, actually, the more and more I have been thinking about, like the last few days about The Children, I have to give kudos to the filmmakers for actually making a film like this, where you not only have like children as the villain, but you straight up just start murdering them in order to survive. I mean, when I think about evil children movie like I know Pet Cemetery, Gage was dead and brought back to life and then is killed again. So, I mean, was that a zombie or is that something else? But, when you think of The Children, like literally they're just murdering children. And I know you're probably like, okay, this is weird, but to have the balls to do something like that, I just find quite interesting. Especially like Village of the Damned and stuff like that, where if I remember correctly, like the children never get their comeuppance. Children of the Corn, stuff like that. I don't recall the actual villainous children reaping what they deserve, reaping what they sowed. The more and more I think about it, like this is one film where literally the children are killing people and they get killed in return. So I do have to give kudos for the filmmakers to actually, have the nerve and the balls to do that. But it's lacking so much. I feel like, I say it deserves a remake, but honestly, I don't think that's a film you could do this day and age. I can see like Cooties and stuff like that because the children turn into like real zombies. But this one is more or less like the children are still children. They just have toxic hugs, basically. They're I don't know if it's their skin or just they're able to control the power. That's never really established or expanded upon. But I don't know. I just find it very interesting. I would like to see a remake of it, but honestly, I don't think it's a film you could make nowadays. That would get approval. I mean, it was as you can see the release of the original the children, it was despised. Critics thought it was despicable and things like that, and I still don't believe it has a cult following. I mean, it had enough of a following for Vinegar Syndrome to release a Blu-ray on it, so that's interesting. And that Blu-ray, I did end up hunting it down. I might buy it, I might not. I did find there's like a bunch of audio commentaries and interviews and featurettes and stuff, and I kind of am like, ooh, Amazon has it, and it's region free, and oh, I kind of want to get it, but also I'm like, I don't know. So I might get it. I might pick it up. If I do, I'm going to get 2 copies, and I might have a contest and do a giveaway of one of the copies if anyone's interested. But I'm not going to pull the trigger on that until I get some feedback, like, oh, people actually, want me to do a contest. Something like that. But anyways, so some more thoughts expanded upon, but yeah. So today our video game of the week is going to be Onimusha 2, Samurai's Destiny. So piggybacking on last week's Onimusha. And I actually have to clear up some things about the first game I didn't realize. It actually does have a counter system where right before the enemy strikes you, if you hit the certain button, you can actually counter strike it, and it's an instant kill on the enemy. Of course, it doesn't work on bosses. I didn't realize that the first game actually had that. I thought Onimusha 2 introduced that system, but I was wrong. I was wrong on the weapons for the original Onimusha. You actually get 2 swords and then the double-bladed bow staff-like weapon. So I just wanted to clear that up. The one sword is has the magical ability of lightning. One has the other sword has the magical ability of fire, and of course the double-bladed bow staff has the power of wind. And Onimusha 2, Samurai's Destiny, is quite similar with the weapons, but you get 5 of them this time. But set in medieval Japan, the plot revolves around Jubei Yagyu, who is on a quest of revenge as he battles a demon army led by the, of course, Nobunaga Oda, a sinister warlord who eliminated the Yagyu clan. So the opening video is literally you're watching the Genma and the Genma are demons slaughtering his village, and then he ends up just at the last minute he gets there. Unfortunately, everyone's dead, so he vows his revenge, and then as he goes on, he is called upon by this strange ethereal voice. Well, it turns out there is a demon woman, and as he finds out, this demon woman is his mother, and she tells him he has the power to slay the demons and absorb their souls through his hand. So instead of the gauntlet like Samanosuke had to use in the first game, he now has the ability to absorb them with his hand, and they also added the feature where if you collect 5 purple special souls, you can become the Onimusha, which grants you invincibility for a short amount of time, and of course your attack damage is greater than normal. I do like Onimusha 2, like I said, but I prefer, out of the 3 of them, my favorite one is the third, and we'll get into that next week. But Onimusha 2, it is quite fun. I actually decided to go back and watch a Let's Play of this because I've been talking about it so much. I was like, I watched Onimusha over the weekend, and I was like, oh, then that's how I realized, like, oh, I screwed up. And I was like, okay, let's go into Onimusha 2. And it's been quite a lot of fun and, enjoyable. And, I forgot about all the different elements in it. Like, there are side characters you can play as. One is Master of the Spear. The other is a ninja. Then you have a female badass warrior who is Jubei's love interest. Although when they introduce her in her cinematic, she's butt naked and taking and like bathing in the river, and I don't know why. I think that's just a bit too much. You really didn't have to add that. If you're going to do that, then you should at least have a male character butt naked, but just to be in fairness. But of course, this was back in the days of, well, inequality and things like that. Back in the days, I think we still have inequality. I'm not going to get into semantics and politics and all that shit. Sorry. And then you also have, I believe, the ninja. I think I mentioned him. There's a ninja. And then, that's right. There is a, not necessarily a gunsmith, but someone who is, he's best with pistols and a rifle, and you can play as them for short periods of time. You also have to give them, you have to solve their own puzzles, and by that I mean there are certain gifts you have to acquire and give to them, which it improves your God, man, words. I can't think of words. What am I trying to think of? Your rapport with them. So, and it can go one way or the other. I've seen where the spear, the guy that handles all the spear stuff, I believe his name is Eki. He, if you ignore him and you don't really become friends with him, you will have to fight him and kill him eventually. And he's got such a sad backstory. All he wants to do is be a feudal lord, and he lost his child in, a horrible. I believe it was during war. He lost his little girl, and it that kind of plays out in the game. There's a section where you have to find a baby, and he comes across it thinking it's his daughter and loses his mind, and so it kind of sucks. He's definitely a character you want on your side. Of course, there's the staple of the box puzzles you have to solve. There are environmental puzzles and stuff like that, and it is quite fun. What I do like, they improved upon the countering. Instead of just the regular straight button mashing, they call it an ISIN, which is where basically, again, if you hit the right button at the right amount, the right amount of time, or at the right moment, you can counter and make it a one-hit kill, which is pretty cool. But now you're able to chain it. I think in the first game you could only do one person or one enemy at a time, where this one you could, if there are several Genma surrounding you, you can do them all at once, which I think is a pretty cool added bonus. So again, you have the blue orbs that when you absorb, the orbs, the souls, whatever you want to call them. The blue orbs recharge magical abilities. Yellow, of course, restore health. This time you get the purple, which will give you the power up to turn into the Onimusha himself, and of course the red orbs or souls that you can use to upgrade your armor, your weapons, your soul sucking ability, and stuff like that. But also, they have included this time gold. You collect gold because part of this part of the game actually takes place in a gold mining town. So as you kill heroes, as you destroy enemies, you can you pick up gold here and there, which allows you to buy the stuff you need to give to the other characters and things like that. It's definitely an interesting, fun dynamic they added to it. It was a huge success, just like the first one. It was released on March 7th in Japan, and in North America it was released on August 27th, and in Europe it was released on October 4th of 2002. It was also re-released when you could get the compilation of Warlords and Demon Siege in 2008 altogether. The same day the game was released in Japan, Capcom also published a fan DVD containing a guide and movies featuring the development staff. That's pretty cool. And it also released a 44-track CD original soundtrack on March 20th of 2002. That's pretty cool. Actually, I do have to admit the soundtrack to this it's pretty cool. It really puts you in the element, and it definitely enhances the atmosphere of things. But yeah, so that's Onimusha 2, basically in a nutshell. I highly, highly recommend it. Before I forget, actually, here is it sold 1.9 million copies worldwide, and excuse me. However, the staff noted it had poor sales in Europe, and as a result, they actually tried appealing to the European fans by adding more Western tones to their next work, Onimusha 3 Demon Siege, which is an interesting concept. It actually takes place in like America, Japan, and Europe at the same time. We'll get into that next week for Onimusha 3. There's a lot to talk about on that one. It was on IGN. It was rewarded the best adventure game in 2002. It received praise for its gameplay and presentation. Of the magazine Famitsu scored a 36 out of 40, and it has been praised for retaining the action elements from its predecessor but adding replay value. But people criticize where you use the D-pad rather than the joystick, but I feel like they improved upon the controls in this one better than the first, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, that is Onimusha 2 in a nutshell. Highly recommend it. I definitely recommend you check out the a let's play of it. It's pretty fun. It's fun to watch, especially if you find someone that's really, really good at the game, and you're able to just kind of take a step back and just kind of relax and enjoy watching the game be played and all the storyline fold out and everything. It has a really cool storyline, like I said, and it's definitely worth a check out. I definitely give it I'm going to give it 4 samurai swords out of 5. Onimusha 2, Samurai's Destiny. So, as brought up in last week's episode about the strange synchronicities about the Wendigo, of course, I wanted to delve more into the Wendigo, especially, I really, it's kind of sparking this whole thing I want to do about, at least, I know I probably may never get popular enough to lecture anywhere, but I do want to create a lecture separating Hollywood from supernatural myth. Like the myth that, Hollywood has that all vampires are sexy and good looking, when in reality, that's not the truth of what a vampire truly looks like, what a werewolf is compared to Hollywood, stuff like that. And especially with the Wendigo, because we've really got this thing of these giant deer antlered creatures, and it's like, no, that's not a Wendigo. The most common Native American description is a gaunt to the point of emaciation. It's desiccated skin pulled tautly over its bone, with its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave, with lips tattered and bloody. Its body was unclean and suffering some suppurations of the flesh, giving off a strange and eerie odor of decay, decomposition, of death, and corruption. Now, that's probably the most common. So basically what they're trying to say is it kind of looks like Gollum in a sense from the Lord of the Rings films. It's this, although taller, not tiny like Gollum, but bigger and taller. But it's like this skeletal, with barely, with its skin just so tight on it, and it's disgusting and depraved. And like I said, Until Dawn did probably the best representation of a Wendigo that I've seen so far. A lot of native cultures also describe it as a spirit, a malevolent spirit. So it may possess people, making them, want to eat flesh of other humans, things like that. It's very interesting. The Algonquin legend describes the creature as a giant with a heart of ice, sometimes though to be made entirely of ice. Its body is skeletal and deformed with missing lips and toes. The Ojibwa describe it as a large creature as tall as a tree with a lipless mouth and jagged teeth. Its breath was a strange hiss, its footprints full of blood, and it ate any man, woman, or children who ventured into its territory. And those were the lucky ones, for it is said the Wendigo chose to possess a person instead, and then the luckless individual would then become a Wendigo themselves, hunting down those he once loved and feasting upon their flesh. Of course, according to legends, a Wendigo is created whenever a human resorts to cannibalism to survive. In the past, this occurred more often when Native Americans and settlers found themselves stranded in the bitter snows and ice of the North Woods. Sometimes stranded for days, any survivors might have felt compelled to cannibalize the dead to survive. Other versions of the legend cite the humans who display extreme greed, gluttony, and excess could also be possessed by a Wendigo. Thus, the myth served as a method of encouraging cooperation and moderation. And that really carries over a little bit into the Hollywood thing, but they mainly stick to the fact that, like, oh, if you cannibalize someone in these certain parts of woods, like the Mordero from Crypt TV really focuses on that. Like, if there's a certain area of somewhere in these woods, if you cannibalize human flesh, you become a Wendigo. And yeah, I understand where they're coming from, but again, it's just their depiction of it is basically a skull with antlers coming out of its head. And again, okay, you got the skull kind of, you got that kind of right, where it's the skeletal-like creature. I have no problems with that, but then you throw the antlers on, and I'm like, come on, we already know that's some bullshit. But that's Hollywood. They have to make it look interesting. They have to create wonder and all that. But that's why I really am thinking about creating a lecture separating Hollywood legend from supernatural myth. Native American versions of the creature spoke of a gigantic spirit over 15 feet tall that had once been human but had been transformed into a creature by magic. Though all the descriptions of the creature vary slightly, the Wendigo, and now here is the absolute most common description of a Wendigo. It has glowing eyes, long yellowed fangs, terrible claws, and overly long tongues, kind of like Venom's tongue. They are sometimes described as having sallow, yellowish skin, and other times they are covered with matted hair. The creature is said to have several skills and power, including stealth, making it a near-perfect hunter, knows and uses every inch of its territory, and can even control the weather. They are also portrayed as simultaneously gluttonous and emaciated from starvation. Wendigos are said to be cursed to wander the land, eternally seeking to fulfill their voracious appetite for human flesh, and there is nothing left to eat. It starves to death. The legend lends its name to the disputed modern medical term Wendigo psychosis. Some psychiatrists consider it a syndrome that creates an intense craving for human flesh and a fear of becoming a cannibal. And that has also been explored in some Wendigo films where, it's not necessarily a spirit possessing someone. It's where they have this sudden craving for human flesh, and they don't turn into a Wendigo-like creature, but they feel they think they have. It's very interesting that, that some films have decided to explore this. If I can, I'll find you a list of some of the films. I know that there is a movie called Wendigo starring Guy Pearce, I believe, touches on this a little bit, where they feel like they're possessed and they're eating flesh and stuff like that. It's an interesting film. It's been a very long time since I've seen it, so I might have to give it a rewatch and do section on it on the podcast. Where were we? Oh yeah, Wendigo psychosis usually develops in the winter in individuals who are isolated by heavy snow for long periods of time. Their initial symptoms are poor appetite, nausea, and vomiting. Subsequently, the individual develops a delusion of being transformed into a Wendigo monster. People who have Wendigo psychosis increasingly see others around them as being edible. At the same time, they have an exaggerated fear of becoming cannibals. The most common response when a person shows signs of Wendigo psychosis was a curing attempt by traditional native healers. In past cases, if these attempts failed and the possessed person began to threaten those around them or to act violently or antisocially, they were then executed. There have been reports regarding this psychosis, dating back hundreds of years. One of those is a 1661 Jesuit relations document stating, what caused us greater concern was the intelligence that met us upon entering the lake, namely that the men deputed by our conductor to summon the nations to the North Sea and assigning them a rendezvous where they were to await our coming, had met their death the previous winter in a very strange manner. Those poor men, according to the report, were seized with an ailment unknown to us, but not very usual among the people we were seeking. They are afflicted with neither lunacy, hypochondria, nor frenzy, but have a combination of all these species of disease, which affects their imagination and causes them a more canine hunger. This makes them so ravenous for human flesh that they pounce upon women, children, and even upon men, like veritable werewolves, and devour them voraciously without being able to appease or glut their appetite, ever seeking fresh prey. And the more greedily, the more they eat. This ailment attacked our deputies, and as death is the sole remedy among those simple people for checking such acts of murder, they were slain in order to stay the course of their madness. Another case documented in 1878 when a Plains Cree trapper from Alberta named Swift Runner suffered one of the worst cases known. Swift Runner was a trader with the Hudson's Bay Company. He was married and he was a father of 6 children. In 1875, he served as a guide for the Northwest Mounted Police. During the winter of 1878 and 1879, Swift Runner and his family were starving, along with numerous other Cree families. His eldest son was the first to die of starvation at some point. Was the first to die of starvation. And at some point, Swift Runner succumbed to Wendigo psychosis. Though emergency food supplies were available at Hudson Bay's company post some 25 miles away, he never attempted to travel there. Instead, he then killed the remaining members of his family and consumed them. He eventually confessed and was executed by authorities at Fort Saskatchewan. Jesus. I don't know why I add T's when they're not there. A Wendigo allegedly made several appearances near Rasu in North Minnesota from the late 1800s through the 1920s. Each time it was reported an unexpected death followed, and finally it was seen no more. Another well-known case involving Wendigo psychosis was that of Jack Fiddler, an OG Cree chief and a medicine man known for his power at defeating Wendigos. Fiddler claimed to have defeated 14 Wendigos during his lifetime. Some of these creatures were said to have been sent by enemy shamans, and others were members of his band who had been taken with the insatiable and curable disease to eat human flesh. They mean band like tribe or group instead of music band. I felt like that kind of needed to be explained. I'm an idiot. Fiddler's brother, Peter Flett, was killed after turning into a Wendigo when the food ran out on a trading expedition. Hudson Bay Company traders, the Cree, and missionaries knew the Wendigo legend, though they often explained it as mental illness or superstition. Regardless, several incidents of people turning into Wendigos and eating human flesh are documented in the company's records. In 1907, Fiddler and his brother Joseph were arrested by the Canadian authorities for murder. Jack committed suicide, but Joseph was tried and sentenced to life in prison. He was ultimately granted a pardon, but died 3 days later in jail before receiving the news of his pardon. Among the, oh my God, I'm going to butcher this name and I apologize. Among the Assiniboine, I'm going to say Assiniboine, the Cree, the Ojibwa, a satirical ceremonial dance is sometimes performed during times of famine to reinforce the seriousness of the Wendigo legend. The frequency of Wendigo psychosis case decreased sharply in the 20th century as the Native Americans came into greater and greater contact with Western ideologies. However, there have been reports of Wendigo creature sightings, especially in northern Ontario near the Cave of the Wendigo and around Kenora, where traders were allegedly spotted. Trackers and trappers for decades. Trackers and trappers have spotted it allegedly for decades. Many still believe that the Wendigo roams the woods and the prairies of northern Minnesota and Canada. Many have given Kenora, Ontario, Canada, the title of Wendigo Capital of the World. Sightings of the creature in this area have continued well into the new millennium. Very interesting. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of delve into that and give like a couple. I can completely agree more or less with this Wendigo psychosis of where you're left with, the only way to survive is to cannibalize someone. And I can't even imagine what that does to your mind. You know, you have to survive by eating a fellow person. Like that's gotta mess you up in the head. And then if you enjoy the taste of it, who knows what happens after that? You become a Wendigo. You become basically a zombie, maybe. Someone that just has the craving for human flesh. But I just wanted to delve into that a little bit more, kind of show the differences, like how Wendigos are most often described, give you some actual supposed reports and things like that. I think we're going to leave the Wendigo alone for a little while, unless, again, we have strange synchronicities that lead up to it. We'll bring it up again, but for now, I think that's all I can say on the Wendigo. As far as what I think actually exists, I feel like it's more or less people with this Wendigo psychosis that is perpetuating the legend and lore. There are still sites of this supposed thing. I also believe that it could be a tulpa or egregore, that this is something that so many people believe in, and so many people believe the legend that perhaps something that looks like a common Wendigo has manifested and is now terrorizing the woods of Ontario and Minnesota. It could be possible. Tulpas and egregores are a very interesting subject, and we're gonna get in that soon. We might break that down next week. I have a lot of thoughts on tulpas and egregores. You know what? We'll do that next week. We'll talk about tulpas and egregores next week because I got a lot to say, and I have a lot of interesting theories myself. I have heard theories from other investigators and researchers that I would talk about, and of course I'm going to give them credit for where I've heard it from and things like that. So yeah, that's the Wendigo, as much as I can think of. That's the Wendigo, and that's all I got to say about it. And here is a spoiler-free review for Shang-Chi, The Legend of the Ten Rings, which is available right now on Disney+. I got to watch it this weekend. I thought it was a great film. The fight choreography was amazing. Everyone that was in it did a very good job in their respective roles. I thought Awkwafina was hilarious. Simu Liu, I believe is his name. I don't know why I mispronounced that, or if I mispronounced that, I should say. As in the lead as Shang-Chi, was a badass. His fight choreography was amazing. I like the fact that he actually is trained in in quite a bit of martial arts, and he was a gymnast, so he's able to do, a lot of the actual fight scenes and stuff like that. And they did a really, really good job of mixing mysticism with martial arts. I highly recommend it. 10 rings out of 10 rings I'm going to have to give it because, well, it's the Legend of the Ten Rings. Check it out. One of the next to Endgame, probably one of my favorite Marvel films, but it was a blast to watch. I highly, highly recommend it. And like I said, it's available on Disney Plus right now. Thank you so much again for tuning in to another episode of a Horribly Nerdy podcast. I hope these are getting better and better as they go on. I think once I can start kind of focusing on, maybe getting more supplies and more audio stuff, that maybe these will get better and better. Next week, I've got a couple new segments I want to throw in and try out, kind of get everyone's feedback on. And I'm not gonna tease them right now because I'm kind of fine tuning them right now. But I have some things I want to try out and have some fun with. So again, thank you so much for tuning into the episode. I truly appreciate your support. I truly appreciate all those that are listening. And again, if you want to support the podcast and help out with maintaining, getting supplies or maintaining storage for podcasts so I don't have to end this podcast, you can by going to patreon.com/horribly nerdy and check out the tiers on there. If you are unable to, I completely understand. I'm trying to get on Apple Podcasts so that way reviews can be left and hopefully more and more people can see it. Once I figure that out, again, if you're not able to contribute, that's fine. Please just leave a review. That will get people, that'll help with all them fancy algorithms and stuff, and more people could discover the podcast and things like that. I also, next week, we're going to do a new segment of some of the podcasts I really enjoy, and we're going to give shout outs to those. So again, thank you all so much for tuning in. I truly appreciate you all, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful week.